representing the very first case to surface of a U.S. internet company agreeing to an intelligence agency's request by searching all messages, not just examining stored messages or scanning a small number of accounts. No, all messages coming in, all messages. It's kind of like vetting.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local shows, including the Jim Parisi Show, Solomon on Blast, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today so we can talk to master musicians about philosophy, wisdom, and love. And my guest today has been woodshedding on the bandstand for quite close to half a century now. Constant improvisation on the drum kit, creating new rhythms. He came up during a time before full interconnection, and he was really charging a leading force of the band known as the Allman Brothers. He continues with his own bands today, mentoring younger musicians on the bandstand to cultivate their own original sound. Butch Trucks, welcome.
Oh, wow. Just keep going.
Show.
I like that.
Yeah, man. Well, welcome, my friend. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, except I'm kind of back and forth between, just before I picked up the phone to call you, I was looking for a cord so we can recharge our battery because we have hurricane shutters that if the power goes out, we won't be able to get them back up again after the hurricane. But it's supposed to hit us tomorrow.
Okay, so, but we're not, Matthew's not supposed to hit during this interview, right?
No, it won't hit during this interview. It won't. It's supposed to be here tomorrow sometime. We're supposed to start getting, right now it's just beautiful. It's just gorgeous outside. But tonight sometime we're supposed to be getting the leading edges of it. And then tomorrow about midday it should be the worst. But the center of the hurricane is not coming. It's supposed to head up about 80 miles off the coast and hit Charleston, South Carolina. And
we're hoping for everybody to be safe. But Butch, I wanted to start out by asking you about your interactions with the following cats. If you ever came across any of the merry pranksters, Ken Kesey, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, because to me you're obviously very well read. You're a smart cat, and you play music. And those guys, in many ways, the Beats were the precursors to the melodic music that you guys were making. And I'm just curious if you ever crossed paths. I'm sure you read their stuff, but did you ever cross paths with them?
No, not personally. I never met any of them, but Kesey I always thought was a little lightweight. But
why is that? Why is that?
Huh?
Why do you feel that way?
Well, he was mostly just the storyteller of what it was like, and he was just a big promoter of LSD and taking drugs and getting loose and all that, and I shouldn't call him lightweight, but when you compare him to Neil Cassidy and oh come on,
Allen Ginsberg, yep.
Ginsberg. Well, Ginsberg was a generation before, but Ginsberg kind of laid it all out. And where it all comes from is, man, my worst thing in the world. I read all this stuff, and I wonder what the hell. Why bother reading it all when you can't remember anything?
I feel the same way, man. We have
there was a group of three philosophers from called the Frankfurt School. That they were three German philosophers, and they were lucky enough to get out of Germany just before the Nazis took over. And two of them wound up at Columbia, and one of them wound up at Berkeley. And that one, and I'll think of his name while we're talking. It starts with an M. I know that.
That's fine.
But,
so I'm very curious because I want you to riff on their philosophy. What was so important about it?
What was so important about his philosophy was how important it was for adolescents, for young people to enjoy free physical, physical love, to enjoy it. That is one of the things that's going to open them up to a full, rich life. To get away from the Victorian ethics and morality and all that, and enjoy sex and enjoy enjoy each other. I mean, the whole concept of free love and everything basically came from his writings. Oh my God! Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. While we're talking here, I'm googling.
Yeah, because so you're telling me these cats were they escaped Nazi Germany? Is that where they came out of Europe after World War II?
Yep.
And so boy, this is fascinating stuff. So in some ways, I'm just you were born in the late '40s, but I just want to know what inspired you to be yourself, because to me, and we can get into this in a minute, but everybody predicated themselves on their own individual sound. Everybody wanted to be different. Everybody wanted to sound different. And I just wanted to know if any, like Kerouac, Kesey, I love Kesey just because he was a zany dude, but I know he dosed a lot of people that were square and all that stuff. But I just want to know who got you off and who sort of let you, where everything just sort of fell away for Butch Trucks, and you really just were able to be yourself.
Well, the guy who really turned me onto music was my introduction to music was the first time I went into my Southern Baptist little kids choir, and we had all the little kids, in the first grade or something like that, singing, and we started to sing a song, and the conductor said, "Hold it." And he said, "Let's do that again." And he started looking around, and he pointed at me, and he said, "After this is over, you stay here." Because everybody started singing, and this big, giant soprano voice came out of the group, and he caught it immediately, and he started teaching me theory and voice, and that got me into music. And then the guy that really got me into it seriously was Leonard Bernstein. He used to have those young people's concerts on Saturday afternoons that were just amazing. He had a way of explaining classical music to kids without talking down to them, where you can understand it, but without sounding like Mr. Rogers,
Oh, I dig. Going back to I want to ask you something. Did you ever go into any kind of sanctified church?
Into a what?
A sanctified church, a black church, more in the rural areas of Florida. I'm just
no. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and I graduated high school in 1965, which means I graduated from a segregated school, because 65 was the year of the Civil Rights Act. So
the reason I asked the question.
So my first exposure to a black human being on any real level was when I met Jaimoe.
Wow.
And Jaimoe just opened the world to me about, because I was raised in a Baptist home. I was raised by a man who grew up on a little family farm north of Birmingham, Alabama. So for all intents and purposes, I should have grown up, hearing the N-word all the time, and my parents treating black people like second, but they never did. I didn't grow up in that. Now, that being said, I was still separated. We didn't interact with people other than white people, But I never got and I remember seeing Hank Aaron play in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was the first black man to play there. The Jacksonville Braves were the minor league team for the Atlanta Braves for the Milwaukee Braves back then, and I couldn't believe it, because you had all the white guys up in the grandstands, and then way over in the bleachers were the black folks, and he'd come out, and he was obviously just a boy, but every time he'd walk up to the plate, you had all these guys around me calling him every damn name you can think of. Wow. And I'm looking around going, well, wait a minute, isn't he on our side?
That is incredible.
Then all he'd do is just step up there and calmly whack it over the fence and then walk around while everybody's booing at him. And I'm going, wait a minute, he just hit one for us. What is going on here?
Wow.
And I don't know. I like I said, I was not, but then I met Jaimoe, and the whole world changed,
Well, let's go into that. This is important because I've talked to Jabbo Starks and Clyde Stubblefield and all these heavy, heavy dudes who came out of the Sanctified Church, and I want to talk to Butch Truck specifically. I mean, because those cats in the church were not using a traditional trap set. They were using tambourines. They were using sticks. They were using a clapping. And
in the church that I went to, they used a piano and an organ, and that was it. I think if we'd have brought in an electric guitar or a set of drums, they would have kicked us out.
Well, you know what it is? I want you to talk to the audience worldwide because we are streaming worldwide. The idea here is this, that you guys played prolifically as the Allman Brothers, and you went off into different stratospheres and sonic portals and all this stuff. But the truth is that the drum has its own language. And now, from Jaimoe and going back to Congo Square and going back to Haiti when Napoleon could not penetrate Haiti. Can you talk about the first time that you really understood the language of the drummer, or a seminal moment when you understood that it was more than just about keeping time?
Yeah. When I really, really started getting into Joe Morello and listening to what he was doing with the Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Time out, yeah.
And how he was, he had all of that technique and all of that feel. And that's when I first picked up on how the drummer makes it feel, And I used to think, up to that point, as a drummer is nothing but a timekeeper. But the closer I listened to even Joe Morello, the more I realized that it's when you're really playing and you're playing with feel. And the music is moving up and down and getting more intense, this, that, and the other. The drummer is not necessarily a timekeeper. Do yourself a favor sometime. I used to worry about rushing, Every drummer worries about rushing. It's kind of human nature that when you get louder, you speed up. That's just human nature. And I think it's one of the reasons that the 80s died so fast, because people listening to a computer playing music, it's boring because a computer doesn't speed up.
I completely agree.
It's just dead center, and it doesn't matter what the music does, it's the same exact tempo. Now, put on Chick Corea's Crossings. You familiar with that record?
I am.
Back in the 70s, Chick Corea, and I think it was still Return to Forever, but it was Chick Corea, and the name of the album is Crossings. Mm-hmm. And there's one whole side of the album is nothing but a jam called Crossings. If you put it on toward the end of the record and listen to it for about 15, 20 seconds, and then go back to the beginning, the tempo had doubled.
I'm already on fire. You are already. I don't know. Big Brother and the Holding Company. Their drummer was Dave Getz, and I just transcribed this interview that I did with him, and he said the early Brubeck stuff, Joe Morello would be playing a great solo, but underneath the solo, everybody else, they're keeping the 5. They're keeping the 1 for him. Is that's?
Oh yeah.
That to me is.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, it's one of the things that. For bottom line is the stuff that he was playing was so damn complex that it's kind of what I used to do a lot is when we started really cutting loose and I couldn't do it so much back with Barry Oakley because Barry was out in La La Land with Dwayne and Dickie. So there wasn't anybody really holding down the pulse, and so I kind of had to do that.
Right.
But then once Lamar Williams got in the band, Lamar was very much, he held the pulse. So I was free to just go. And I used to do it all the damn time. I would just let it go. I'd start playing threes against fours against and just go and go and go and let it go. And I would completely lose the one. Have no idea where the one was.
I love that you brought you're channeling this. I mean, so but here's the thing. Okay, so because this is so vital for cat. I'm not a musician. I'm just a journalist, but I love the rhythm. I'm 38 years old. You talked about the 80s crashing and dying. You can talk about disco and the drum track and cocaine and everything sped up and all that crap. You listen back to your stuff, and the key though, and I want you to talk about this, when you got to the point with Lamar was the idea of saying that your philosophy on the idea that any note can be the one. The idea is that if you get lost or just get consumed within some wild mountain jam and you lose where the one is, you realize that any note can be the one. I kind of wanted
that's exactly right.
I wanted you to riff on that.
What I finally realized is all I have to do is keep the pulse. As long as I'm in the same pulse with everyone else, then it really doesn't matter. This last leg that I did with the freight train.
Sure.
Me and our percussionists were playing, just doing what they call it a drum solo. I have never played a drum solo in my life because I get tired of critics criticizing. The Allman Brothers, they come to see a show and they say, it was a great night, but, when the drum solo came around, then it's time to go to the bathroom, and I'm thinking that if you're supposed to be smart enough to be a critic, you should know that a solo is one person. I've never played a drum solo in my damn life. It was me and Jaimoe, which was a duet.
Right.
Then we added Mark Quinones, which became a trio. And then toward the end, O'Teal used to, after he'd finish his bass drum, his bass solo, yeah, he did that, and we would kind of back him up a little bit, but he was out in front playing bass. After he finished that, he would come around, I would play a little on my drums, then I'd slide off, get on the timpani, and O'Teal would get on my drums. So there were four of us going toward the end.
And if anybody,
you call that a percussion ensemble. It's not a solo.
Well, in full disclosure, for a long time, whether it was Joe Cocker double drums, the Grateful Dead double drums, or the Allmans with you and Jaimoe, that was not. It took a while for my ear to really understand that was probably the best part of the show. It was, and most people were. Our manager is a guy named Bert Holman.
When he one of the first times he ever heard us, he was out and he was a road manager for a band with Jack Bruce and Billy Cobham, and I forget where we were playing, but we were up playing, and he said he was down in the dressing room with Cobham, and Cobham stops and goes, God damn, listen to that drummer. and Bert said, no, that's two drummers. And Cobham said, that's even more incredible. I'll be right back. And he came charging up because he couldn't believe that the two of us could play that well together.
Well, no, because what you're going to trip out about is that Bert Holman is twice my age, but we both went to the same summer camp at Scatico, and I did a long interview with him about a year ago. I think it might have been in American University somewhere. I don't know, somewhere around there that when he first heard you guys.
Yeah, that's where he started. Yeah,
but it's to me. The other part of it is, Butch, can you talk about, I'm producing a documentary on Stan Getz, and Getz was on the road with Teagarden in 9th grade, okay? And the guy had no formal academic training. He just had perfect pitch. He had the most you could write lyrics to his melodies, but most importantly, he had big ears. And I would love you to talk to the audience about but maybe it was with Barry because he was out in Spaceland. But when did your ears grow the most?
Oh, God. Without a doubt, the first 2 or 3 months after we put together the Allman Brothers, it may have happened in that one first jam that we had when it was me and Jaimoe and Barry and Dwayne and Dickie and Reese Winans. This was before Greg came from L.A. And we got into a jam at the Second Cummings house, and Dwayne had been there in Jacksonville for 3 or 4 weeks trying to put together a band, and he had finally decided on who was going to be in that band, and we were in that was us, and except for Greg, he still had to get Greg in, but we started a jam that lasted 3 or 4 hours, and I mean, it was just like, it was like my brain went, oh my God, you can do this? This is unbelievable. But I'll say probably the most important moment in my life, musically and culturally and, for my life in general, was a jam that I had a few weeks earlier than that, because I had played with Dwayne a couple of years before he came to Jacksonville to do the Allman Brothers. Me and a guy named David Brown and Scott Boyer, we had this group called the Bitter End, and we were friends with Dwayne and Greg. And we happened to be coming through Daytona after their Hourglass thing split up, and we joined forces. Went to Miami, recorded a bunch of stuff. That album was released as Dwayne and Greg Allman, and it was not. In fact, most of the songs on there, Dwayne and Greg aren't even on it. But it's the first time Melissa was ever recorded. But anyway, I had this tendency back then. I wasn't all that self-confident. And I had a tendency to kind of, if things weren't going great, to kind of pull back. Mm-hmm. And so when Dwayne came to Jacksonville to put together the band, he had Jaimoe. And Jaimoe, incredible jazz player, but he knew that Jaimoe wasn't powerful enough to drive the kind of band that he wanted to put together. And he said, if James Brown can have 2 drummers, so can I. So
that's right.
So Jaimoe kept telling him, because there's 3 or 4 other drummers that wanted that job, and they were pretty good. They were damn good. And Jaimoe kept telling him, Butch is your guy. Butch is your guy. But I don't think Dwayne was going to have me in his band with that fault, with that, backing up when things weren't going well. And we were jamming one day and got into this shuffle that wasn't going anywhere. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, everybody's looking at me. So I started pulling back. And Dwayne whipped around and stared me in the eye and played this lick like, come on, damn it. And my first reaction is, oh, my. And then he did it again. And then he did it again. And after about the 3rd time, I started realizing there's hundreds of people out there watching him show me up. And I started getting pissed. And so he did it again, and then I slammed my damn drum, and then he did, and then he and I literally got into a fist fight with our instruments. I was hitting my drums like I was hitting him upside the head, and he was throwing it back at me, and we went back and forth, and then finally he stepped back and smiled and pointed at me and went, "There you go."
That's
and it's like he reached inside of me and flicked this switch, And this light went on and said, Butch, you may not be the greatest drummer in the world, but you can play. And there is no reason to ever apologize. And that from that day to this, I have never backed off.
Well, Jimmy Smith used to, I don't know, did you ever see Jimmy play, the organ player?
Yeah.
Because that dude would do
man,
that.
I've always wanted to put together a big band to do nothing else but walk on the wild side with a great organ player.
No, but he, I talked to cats that would see him at Small's Paradise, places in New York, and he did the same thing, not necessarily to motivate a drummer, but to the audience. He'd play a lick, and if you didn't get it, he'd play the same lick, and if he didn't get it, he'd play it again and again, and he'd get right in your face about it. It was like, you are going to dig this. And I love the fact that there's Dwayne basically saying, Butch, You're here for a reason. Get on your horse and start woodshedding. Start
Oh, yeah.
playing. And to me, that's
Well, it wasn't a matter of woodshedding.
That's
I
the
knew
wrong
what I
word.
was
That's the
doing.
wrong word
It
to
was a
use,
matter
yeah.
of just getting my head straight. It was a matter of just playing with power and playing with confidence and quit being afraid.
Right.
That's plain and simply what it was. And that epiphany is the reason that I got in the Allman Brothers rather than being a math teacher.
No, we're really.
Oh, and by the way,
yeah.
that philosopher that all of the guys in San Francisco picked up from, his name was Herbert Mancuso.
Now I'm curious about because this was Greg was on the left coast, and you got were there cats, were there philosophers that were you reading that stuff? What were you deriving from? Because let's face it, you guys were blazing a trail that nobody had blazed before. Like Dave Mason told me. Dave Mason said he's like, we just basically heard the blues, we heard the from the States, we did it in England, we repackaged it and sold it back to you. So you guys were doing stuff that was completely revolutionary, but yet relentless touring, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of insanity. Tell me a little bit about some of the philosophers that you got off on.
Well, I didn't really start reading the heavy philosophy until Dwayne and I did it. I was an avid reader. I read my way through high school, somehow graduated top of my class, and all I did was sit in the back of the class and read books all the time. But when the Allman Brothers started, this is very, very odd, but the very first day that we had rehearsal in Macon, Georgia, was the day I started Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Wow. And that got me into, and I'd always been into mythology. All the way through high school, all the Edith Hamilton and, Metamorphosis, the Roman guy, Ovid, yeah. And I read, all Greek and Roman mythology. That fascinated me. But Tolkien is the mythology of the 20th century, and The Lord of the Rings is the best of the best.
That's
so
right. Mm-hmm.
I read that, and I've probably read it 20, 25 times since then, and seen the movies many times. And thank Peter, whatever his name is, for making that film. Those were incredible. But I turned Dwayne on to Tolkien. We used to go fishing when we'd have time off. We'd have an afternoon off. He and I would just go find a lake somewhere and buy a couple of cheap rod and reels and sit on the side of the lake with plastic worms and talk. And and Dwayne was also an avid reader. He and I were the two readers in the band. And he was reading all kind of stuff, and I turned him on to Tolkien. And as you may know, his daughter's name is Galadriel.
Well, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, well, she wrote that book called, she wrote her. Oh, come on, it's
Let me. It's my turn to go. Dwayne, how do you spell that? That name?
Oh, come on, Galadriel. It's just like the book, except he adds an E to it. Galadriel with a E to it. Galadriel Allman. The book is come on, it's a song that Scott Boyer wrote.
There we go. It's coming. It's called "Please Be With Me."
Please be with me. That's it.
Please
Thank
be
you.
with
Thank you.
me.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, and then anyway, I'm actually wearing a shirt right now that has on it what got us into real philosophers. It says, "Without music, life would be a mistake." That is a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. And Dwayne read that somewhere, and we were talking about that one day, and he was finishing up Tolkien, and we're thinking, well, what are we going to read next? And I said, well, how about we try Nietzsche? I really didn't know what I was saying, but I said, well, why don't we try it? So we got his magnum opus, which is called Also Sprach Zarathustra, and we dove in, and that's what we used to do. We'd go sit and fish and talk for an hour or two about what we've been reading. And, Nietzsche's Also Sprach Zarathustra is pretty dense stuff. And And because the two of us were reading it together, we were able to pick up on a lot more than if we'd have been on our own. Dwayne would catch things that I would miss, and I would catch things that he would miss. And then we went from there to John Locke because of Locke's real profound philosophy about the separation of church and state.
Sure.
You know, although Locke was a devout Christian, he knew how horrible it was when the church runs the government. You know, he finished the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades, and you know, we can see what's going on with theocracies in the Middle East right now. You know,
oh, I mean, you are nailing. I mean, to me, this is like. I mean, I'm glad you followed your career path. I almost wish you became a teacher. I mean, this is. But you know, I mean, can I ask you a question? This is really funny. I interviewed a cat named Tom Ledden, Bernie Ledden's brother, a couple weeks back, and he was in a band called Mudcrutch with Tom Petty. Did you? They used to play strip clubs in Jacksonville. Did you play any burlesque houses? This is pre-Allmans. Did you ever play? Like, what was the funniest venue you ever played in?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess the funniest venue I'd ever played in was the last one I just did with the freight train.
What was that?
We played on a little steamboat on a lake just up in New York someplace.
Yeah, but I mean that's like white collar. I'm talking like, you know, job for. I mean, because I talked to plenty of cats who, I mean, literally the strip clubs used to provide great, you know, jobs for a lot of the jazzers. They'd play 3 sets.
Oh, it did. I know, but we didn't do that. By the time I was old enough to be playing strip clubs, we were putting together the Allman Brothers. So, maybe I had a year there. I could have,
yeah.
But I was on the band with the bitter end, and we were playing the psychedelic dungeons that were popping up all over the South back then. And
tell me a little bit about if you could talk. We had such a great interview, and I really. Find her to be an inspiration, and I think that she's sort of right place, right time, but also somebody who's really growing into herself. You just talk about the experience of having an opportunity to be on the bandstand with Heather Gillis.
Oh, with Heather?
Yeah.
She just, you know, the day that I met her, I was playing some blues club outside of Tallahassee. And somebody came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "There's this girl here that wants to sit in." And she came walking up, and my first reaction was, "Boy, this is going to suck." You know?
Yeah, right.
Because it's like being born a billionaire where I work.
Right,
you know?
Right.
You know, Heather can make it through life just fine, just on what she looks like. You know,
sure.
She doesn't have to learn how to play anything or sing anything, but. She got up and she did that Bill Withers song, "Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone," and then just ripped that Gibson Les Paul, and I went, "Oh my God," you know. I mean, she's still young and she still has a ways to go, but boy, she's already gone a long way for someone 21 years old. And playing with her these last 2 years, I've just been watching her explode, you know, because she never stops practicing. And she's just really, really bright. It's a lot of fun, and it's really fun being in a band with her, you know. And
I mean, so can you talk about like the sonically what she's added to the freight train, or you know, in terms of not just vocally, but I don't think I realized that she was that prolific guitar player as well.
No, she's a damn good guitar player,
yeah.
And I mean, you know. Like I say, she's still got a ways to go, but she's doing it. I mean, she's twice as good now as she was 2 years ago, and because her mind is open. You know, she was madly in love with Derek, my nephew, and she thought Derek hung the moon until she heard Jack Pearson playing, and now that's all she can listen to is Jack Pearson. I mean, you know, Jack plays free. He plays open. You never know what he's going to do next, you know.
Right.
And he's got all the chops in the world, you know. And, you know, Derek's got all the chops, but Derek tends to be a little formulaic with the way he approaches his guitar now. And once she found that, I mean, now I'm having a ball just, you know, because to me that's what that's what I love playing, and it's the reason I'm still doing it. And all the people that are in the Freight Train Band, Heather, Damon Fowler, this Chris that we just added from Bruce Katz's band. I wish I could have gotten Baylor, my son, to join the band, but I don't know. He seemed to he used to laugh about it. He played with us a lot, but
he's in a trio though, right? You got a trio of his own.
Yeah, he's got this group called the Yeti Trio.
What's that about? What is the Yeti Trio? I was like very fascinated.
It is you take Sun Ra and
wow, I love it.
And people like and just mix it together and they are incredible. Incredible.
No, that's
and they've never heard of 4/4 or 3/4 in their lives. I mean, they're all over the damn place, time signature wise. But anyway, I kept trying to get Baylor to say, "Why don't you quit your job?" He's got a great job. He's head of IT for a big insurance company in Atlanta. And he finally bust out laughing one day. He said, I got to be the only kid in the world whose dad wants him to quit a 6-figure job to go to join a rock and roll band.
He made decent bread on the rock scene, though. I mean, not as good as that. But, I know, here's the thing. I want to be clear, Butch, because I've interviewed Jaimoe and Clyde Stubblefield, and with James Brown, they were never on the bandstand together. Were the Allman Brothers... Were you guys the first ones to have two drummers on the bandstand together?
No, the Dead were doing it first.
Now you saw
the Dead were doing it first. Now the difference is the way the Dead do it is Kreutzmann and Mickey. They're very careful about working around each other. Kreutzmann will play the pattern and Mickey is over playing whatever it is he plays. I'm not quite sure.
He's the punctuator. He's doing these fills or something. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know.
I know. We've all been.
The last time I saw the Dead, when that Planet Drum started, I had to leave.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. In full disclosure, I've talked, and I'm not trying to bag on him because he's done some cool collaborations, but I mean, Mickey can't. I mean, it's well known going back to the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and he could just never keep time. So go ahead, continue.
No, he just can't play. Yeah. But anyway, but what Jaimoe and I.
Yeah, right. But you saw them play
from the first day we ever played.
Yeah.
We both just played completely and totally what we wanted to play.
Wow.
But our styles just happen to be such that they work. I come from a rock and roll, on the beat type of background. And Jaimoe, although he was playing rhythm and blues, played with Otis Redding and Sam and Dave and Percy Sledge and all those people, his passion was jazz. And when I first met him, you could hardly tell him from Max Roach.
Really?
I mean, oh, yeah. And in fact, that's what he was going to do when he got the call to go to Muscle Shoals and meet Dwayne. He was headed to New York to go starve as a jazz drummer. And
right, go starve in an alley
and one of his buddies, in fact, it was the guy who wrote Try a Little Tenderness, a guy named Jackie Avery, told him, he said, "Man, you ever want to make money, get in one of those white bands." And so he got the call, and he said, "Well, let me go see what's going to happen here." And he went over and met Dwayne, and the two of them hit it off. And then Dwayne brought him to Jacksonville, and I met him, and then we hit it off, and then we started playing together, and it was magic. I mean, because the way he approaches, a jazz drummer tends to be very syncopated. Is always playing around what the lead player is playing. When Elvin's playing and John Coltrane's playing Love Supreme,
right.
Elvin's playing really light, playing patterns that do nothing but accentuate what John Coltrane is playing. And so when Jaimoe and I played together, we never got in each other's way, and it was never planned. We never practiced it. That's just the way we play. And the only problem that we did have was with our bass drums, and we solved that by the way we tune them. Jaimoe used an 18-inch bass drum with no muffler, And so we put my bass drum in the mix right down the middle, big 22H bass drum with a muffler on it, so you get that funk, that you want from the bass drum in a rock and roll band. And then Jaimoe's bass drum was more like a tom-tom.
Sure.
It sounded more like a tom-tom. It didn't sound like a bass drum. So our styles worked, and the only problem that we would have had, we solved just by the way we tuned our drums.
How did you guys, or how did Jaimoe work with you? Because Barry was out in La La Land playing psychedelic. Basically the drum. I mean, in theory, the bass player is supposed to lock the groove, but he was before Lamar. You were having a hard time. How did you guys get around that, or how did you guys deal with that?
Well, we didn't. We just played. And I just took my role as being, the guy that kind of held down the fort while everybody else went out into La La Land.
Yeah, but Butch, here's the thing. And you can, Hurricane Matthew's barreling in on the southeastern part of the United States, but you want to. I want you to put on just take a break and give yourself some credit, because let me tell you something. Like Kreutzmann with the Dead, same thing with you. You can say everybody's out there in La La Land. If you don't have somebody that holds it down, then it's going to sound like a mess. A mess.
Of course.
And but you listen to Stony Brook, where I grew up I grew up in Stony Brook. Obviously, I wasn't even born in '71. You listen to these seminal shows. The thing is as tight as it's tight. It's 25 minutes long. You might have different tempos, or you might fluctuate a little bit. It would be a total mess. I mean, really, if you could talk about. I mean, was it just very obvious that you knew right away your goal was to hold it down so that everybody could kind of improvise over the top? I mean, it wasn't like you were playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it started the day that we worked up whipping posts. It was the first day Greg showed up, and we had learned 2 songs so far. We had Trouble No More and that Don't Want You No More. We were working on that. A little arrangement.
Sure.
And then Greg came in and we played them for him, and Greg took Dwayne aside and he said, "Damn, I'm not good enough for this band." And sometimes I wish Dwayne had listened to him, but anyway, he sat him down and he had all of these songs, and one of them was Whipping Post, but he had written it as a slow ballad. And we're going, boy, this is a great song, but not like that. And then Oakley starts going don dun 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 dun, and I'm the only one in the band that was trained with theory, and I could tell what he was doing. Jaimoe was sitting behind his drums trying to play it with him, and it wasn't working.
Wow.
And I let him do it for a while, and then I smiled and I looked at Jaimoe and I said, "Jaimoe, 3 3s and a 2. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2." And they did that, and Oakley goes, "God damn, we're playing jazz."
I love it. This is what I love to hear.
He started out that, and I always get tickled because it's one of the guys in the Dead. Always say that we stole that 11 from that Dark Star jam they did, and it always tickles me because I remember how it happened, and that 11 that Barry Oakley came up with, he had no idea it was 11.
Yeah, and the Dead are assuming that you ripped it off.
And I'm quite certain he never heard Dark Star before too, and so. Anyway, that kind of took us going in that direction, and then once we started playing that pattern, that whipping post pattern, I be damned, I have looked everywhere and I cannot find any other song that has that drum pattern in it. That is mine. I made up that pattern so that Jaimoe and everybody else could go and do what they were wanting. Just a real strong, driving, jazzy feeling 3/4.
Exactly.
It's not something that you get in rock and roll very often, and it's mine. I mean, at least I can't find it anywhere else, and.
I wanted. Yeah. I mean, this is. I'm just intoxicated. I just wanted to ask you about you were born in the late 40s, but did you ever get off on? Were you ever fascinated with bebop? Did you get to see Dizzy Gillespie play? Did you get to see Miles? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is those guys.
I did, but not until I was in my 20s.
Can you talk about? I guess as a leader.
'Cause, I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't listen to rock and roll. When I was a kid, I mean, I started out listening to
Leonard Bernstein.
Well, classical. I mean, I was into classical, but even before that, I really like George Gershwin's orchestral stuff.
Sure,
Rhapsody in Blue and American in Paris, and that concerto in C that he wrote, piano concerto in C that he wrote. I didn't particularly like his pop songs, but you know, his orchestral stuff I really liked. And then that moved into Impressionism and Beethoven and Bach and people like that. That was my first, what I was really into. So, you know, until I went off to college and got turned on to the Byrds and Bob Dylan and everything else, which is what got me back into rock and roll. Because in high school I was playing the Ventures, and then when in 1965, the only thing that was going on was the Beatles, and the early two Beatles records is just nothing but, you know, rehash Chuck Berry.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new.
Oh, we had
about the same time that the Byrds and Dylan came along, then Rubber Soul came along, and everything changed. All of a sudden, rock and roll became, you know, a way of actually playing legitimate music. You know, it's more than just three chords and a bunch of jumping around. You know, and it became valid music, a viable musical form. And
the bands you just mentioned, the with Dylan, the Byrds, and the Beatles, how much do you like when it became a reputable form of melodic music and wasn't just, you know, three chords and a cloud of dust? I mean, how much do you give credence to the fact that legal LSD, had something to do with that?
That who?
Well, I'm curious. You know, rock was pretty. I mean, it was a pretty vapid time in the early '60s. There's a lot of jug bands, like
right.
I mean, by the mid '60s, you talked about Rubber Soul. You talk about the Byrds, Dylan, the Warlocks had started. I'm just curious as to
this Lovin' Spoonful.
You know, I'm just wondering about if you feel that LSD was a catalyst for to stretch rock out the way it did, because it wasn't really happening before.
It's possible, yeah, because after I got into them, then all of a sudden that opened up, you know, Jefferson Airplane and Buffalo Springfield and all this stuff that was happening out in California that was very legitimate and you know, and very good. It was very good music, good melodic. There was that part though. There were more songs, a lot more vocals. Not a whole lot of instrumental stuff going on yet.
That's right.
That wouldn't happen until Cream.
That's right. No, I mean, we're talking to Butch Trucks here on the Jake Feinberg Show, having a ball here. What did Jaimoe, if you could just, if there was one thing that he taught you, or that opened your world, what would it be? What would be the seminal thing?
Oh, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. You're a human being, and he's probably one of the finest people I've ever known in my life. And you know, he gave me a real life lesson in how to be a decent human being.
Could you give an example?
Well, just by being himself. He's one of the kindest, gentlest, wisest people I've ever known. And he also happens to be the first black man that I ever really got to know.
Did you see him I'm sure you must have seen him confront bigotry and how he handled it. I mean, it was just grace, class, and can you talk about a specific time where you saw him exude true humanity in the face of hatred?
Yeah. We were coming through southern Alabama one time. We stopped at this diner to have breakfast, and we took Jaimoe in with us. And the waitress that was supposed to wait on us happened to be the sheriff's wife, and the sheriff was there. And before everybody could get everything flushed down the toilet, we were arrested and hauled off to jail. And they took us to the local lockup, and Jaimoe wasn't with us. Jaimoe disappeared. And then they finally moved us to the county lockup, and it was still segregated, so they put us all on the black side, which probably turned out to be a good thing, because I think if they'd have put all us like hippies in with the rednecks in southern Alabama, we'd have probably got killed on the white side. I think we almost got killed on the black side, but we got away with it.
Right.
We bought a bunch of cigarettes, but then we found Jaimoe again, and yeah, I mean, that was a place where we were arrested, spent 2 or 3 days in jail because we happened to have a black man with us, and Jaimoe was just fine. I mean, Jaimoe, he just took it in stride. I mean, it's the crap that he grew up in his whole life, and he was just he just didn't, his demeanor didn't change. It just didn't change. He was very, very, very strong. And I mean, he took that kind of crap. Now, when he was out there with all the rest of us, then if anybody gave him any crap, then they had to deal with the rest of us. So it didn't happen very often.
Sure, no, but I mean, just the idea of that was the first black person that you had a chance to collaborate with.
Yeah, and it also showed me exactly how absolutely screwed up America. I mean, and right now it just seems to be headed back in that direction with all this crap that's going on with Trump and everything else.
Can I ask you, Butch?
All this bigotry that's coming out right now is just.
Yeah. Is it because we still? I mean, is it because I don't want to sound like I mean, I'm 38, but I want to. Is it really hearkening back to that fact that we can't get over our original sin, which is slavery? Is that why are we so we can't get out of this loop, Butch? And I mean, I look at it and I say,
well, for one thing, ever since Ronald Reagan, we've been slashing education and slashing education and slashing education. And right now, there has been, especially since Ronald Reagan, this anti-intellectualism that has become quite pervasive around the country, and oh God.
Here's the thing. How does that relate to?
Well, no. And I actually got something the other day on Facebook that I couldn't believe. I made a comment about Trump and this out and the other, and this guy, he said, I really get sick and tired of you arrogant, overeducated jerks. And I couldn't believe that someone was actually using being overeducated as a negative, as a put down.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
And I said, yeah, I'm an arrogant jerk. Yeah, but first time in my life I've ever been, you sir scare the shit out of my overeducated ass.
Well, because he's given credence to this. I mean, to this these people that I just gather that there's resentment, this belief in the simpleton answers. I think
what Trump has brought out is things used to be in this country that white males ran everything.
That's really at the core of what it is, because we have a strong woman running against him too. That also factors into it.
Well, but it's more than that.
I know it is.
Trump is absolutely right out in the open about, everything that's wrong is wrong because of Muslims. Everything that's wrong is wrong because of, somebody else. And it's time that we go back to making America great again. And what these people hear is it's time we go back to the 50s when white men dominated everything. Women get back in the kitchen where they belong. And the black people step out of the way when their betters are walking down the street in front of them.
Let me ask you something. Is it that, my wife is Taiwanese. I have a multicultural family with 2 children. Is it that the minorities, which soon will make a majority in this country, they're not used to a democratic system, so they have not learned how to advocate and push back against that hatred. How come there has not been the ability to push back? Again, this is not a majority of people. This is a minority of scary people that scare the shit out of Butch Trucks and myself. How come people? I mean, is it because the Muslims and the Chinese they're used to growing up in more authoritarian or theocratic or communistic society?
I think that's part of it, and hopefully you can get a few people like Martin Luther King or somebody to get them to rise up and not take the crap anymore. You know, otherwise it's going to head right back to where it was. And you know, we've got to have more strong feminists standing up. You just got to pray that well, I think Hillary's going to win the presidency. What scares me is that the GOP is going to keep Congress, and I don't know if Hillary's even going to be able to get a damn Supreme Court appointee past the Senate. You know.
I just want to talk. Yeah, no, this is important. You are a leader of the Freight Train band. You had before I spoke to Heather, you were going on a summer tour, and I just think it's important in general, whether you're, you know, whatever, it's all one human race, and nobody knows that better than Butch Trucks. We are all one human race, and there's a lot of cultural bias and a lot of people that hang out with the same people.
If we could do two things, if we could just get rid of religions and get rid of countries, this could be a great world.
Wow, that sounds like John Lennon.
Well, John Lennon was right.
Here's my question. You tell the audience, in your mind as a band leader and in general, in 2016, cats that are, you know, a little more insecure, haven't found their voice completely yet, what are the most important qualities of leadership that Butch Trucks believes is essential as we move forward in this very uncertain time?
Well, the most important thing that I do is let the people that are working with me be themselves. I don't try to tell them what to do. I try to give them some guidance if they want it, but mostly, you know, it's everybody that plays in the Freight Train and everybody that plays in Libraires. But you know, the Freight Train is much more because these are younger people. Libraires are pretty much all my age and they've been around for a while. But the Freight Train, there, you know, we've got 3 generations in there, and including Heather, who's 21 years old now, and you know, what I try to do is more than anything else just put that confidence into her that Dwayne put into me, to get her to quit, you know, worrying so much about what she sounds like or looks like or anything else, and just get up and let it go. Just let it go and do it because it feels good, and just, you know, give it everything you have. And you know, and that's what I would say to anybody out there, and that relates to everything in life. It's an old Davy Crockett saying, "Be sure you're right, and then go ahead." You know.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's exactly right. Unlike the Trump methodology, which is act first and then ask questions later, and plunder first, and then, you know, figure about that's the thing that worries me too about a lot of these Neanderthalish people, is that it's so reactive, and then at the end it's like, oh wow, we broke the China doll, and now I don't know how we're going to fix it, but we broke it because that's what we thought was right. You know, I just don't see.
Well, you are aware of what just happened with Congress? They passed this bill,
right,
to make it okay for people to sue Saudi Arabia for 9/11.
Right.
And Obama vetoed it. And they overrode the veto. And now they're screaming at Obama, said, "Why didn't you explain to us what all was in this thing?" And he's saying, "Why didn't you read the damn bill?"
Yeah, I know. These Tea Party people. And you're right, in it in Jacksonville. I mean, these people they're like, yeah, why didn't you tell us what it said in the bill? Isn't that your job, to read the bill?
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because you know what's going to happen.
These are guys that worked 94 days this year and have done absolutely nothing, and done nothing but block and The fact that Obama's gotten done what he's gotten done is miraculous. So
yeah, it's the work of a different, it's the work of it's a divine work.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, Butch.
Yeah, I actually do have to go.
I know you have to go.
I have to have everything off my balcony within the next half an hour. So
I dig. No, the last question for you, my friend, is what do you have coming up before the end of the year, insofar as so much of, whether it was Watkins Glen or whether it was, all these historic concerts, there was a lot of social justice action. There was a lot of, you guys, your music went beyond just the actual application of music, and you were playing for causes, and you were, are you going to do anything insofar as trying to elevate consciousness or enlightenment before the election, musically?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best. I'm trying to it's sad to say it's not the Allman Brothers now. We're not drawing the kind of crowds we used to draw, but still, when like just talking to you, whoever's listening to me just got my input on what I think of Donald Trump and what is going on with that gang and what is wrong with this country. We are not going to fix this country until we fix our education system. Because Jefferson said it. A representative democracy cannot function without an educated electorate. It just can't work.
Yeah,
you wind up with all of these people like that are believing Donald Trump. I mean, and he's telling 80-90% of what he says is lies, and they believe every word of it because they want to.
But that's because they're not.
And
because they don't,
until that changes, then it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And maybe if Trump doesn't win this time, then whoever Donald Trump is next time will win.
Well, I just want to tell you one thing. I need you to drop a couple of those bigot cats that write those comments on Facebook, because I'm trying to friend you, but you've reached the maximum request. So what I do with a lot of these things, my tentacles are so far out on Facebook that I disseminate a lot of these stories on Facebook. I'd love to connect with you out there, like I have with all the other cats, and
okay,
we can stay in touch.
Keep trying. People keep trying to.
I'm just saying, if you got people chiming in.
Oh, wait a minute! I got your name. Let me send you I'll send you a
request. Send me a request.
A friend, okay?
Yeah, buddy. Much love to you, man. Get the stuff off your porch.
Because if you send one to me, it just says I already have 5,000.
Exactly.
People.
No, you need
Even
to get.
Though I have been booting people right and left because I'm sick and tired of hearing the Trump crap.
Yeah, knock them off, and then we can get some Butch truck stories up and getting them flying all over the universe. All right.
You got it.
All right, man. Be good. Be safe.
All right, you too.
Cheers,
Take care.
man. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. An electric hour with legendary drummer Butch Trucks from the Allman Brothers, now part of the Butch Trucks and the Freight Train Band. Steam rolling ahead, and he's got to clear off his porch because of the Hurricane Matthew barreling down in the southeastern portion of the United States. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Thanks to Jim Parisi and Power Talk. We will now rejoin the Jim Parisi Show.
Afghanistan or Iraq, had they been moved into Vietnam,